Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Just the other day, I did a video on the potential split within the SNP. Yousaf has, after all, selected a cabinet made up entirely of his supporters. It's almost as though he thinks he had a major win rather than just scraping over the line, and he is effectively ignoring half the membership. It isn't going to end well. Well, it seems that potential split has now evolved into a gaping chasm. At least 15 MSPs at this time have formed a new faction within the party, and they are demanding real and substantial change to the policies that Yousaf is enacting on behalf of Nicola Sturgeon. How will this end? Will it be pretty? Are we going to laugh? Answers to those and more in the next bit when we go down and see what is happening and what the ramifications are going forward should this group gain more power and are able to change everything. Here goes. Right, I saw this in the Herald. Yousaf faces 15 rebel SNP MSPs who are prepared to challenge the government. Yousaf is potentially facing a rebel group of 15 SNPs in Holyrood, the Herald on Sunday has been told. Its members are understood to be mostly parliamentarians who backed the former Finance Secretary Kate Forbes' leadership bid, but insiders say it also includes some who publicly endorsed Mr Yousaf. He cannot even control his own supporters. Even those who supported him are now already within that first week of him taking over demanding change. It's very, very telling. They say they will seek to actively engage with business and believe the relationship between government and the sector needs to be reset. And they plan to publish their own set of policy papers on jobs and the economy, which they will present to ministers and hope the documents will lead to constructive discussions. Under Sturgeon, this, of course, would never have happened. She would never have allowed such a disparate group to even exist, let alone to demand that they have the right to present policy. So it just goes to show straight away how weakened Yousaf is in his position, that people find themselves quite easily able to form factions that disagree with him and to demand change. He's not an effective leader. Central beliefs of the grouping were key planks of Miss Forbes' leadership campaign, raising money to tackle poverty, improving public services and advancing the independence cause by building a more prosperous Scotland. Yes, rather than that foaming-mouthed rabid approach of independence on every single level at all times. Insiders say the members of the new grouping, who regard themselves as business friendly, will look to amend government legislation if they believe it does not align with these goals. And you can guarantee, number one, is that they will be trying to get rid of the bottle deposit scheme, which is absolutely mad and bad legislation. It will not work, and it is so prone to fraud. It is a joke. Anyway, they said there is no intention to routinely vote against everything for the sake of it, but we will be able to carefully scrutinise policy positions and add our voice to get better outcomes, and we will do that. None of this is being anti anything. We want to make things better, said the source. The SNP historically had legendary discipline where people even haven't asked questions, and it is that is changing. I would say that cannot be a bad thing if you want to get to better policy outcomes. And that's the trouble. It was never questioned. Sturgeon would not tolerate any questioning or any objection to what she said was going to happen, and that is why the madness occurred. Some of these decisions made by the SNP were done purely because nobody dared ask questions, nobody dared stand up and gainsay the leadership, and thus the wrong questions were never asked and the wrong decisions were always arrived at. It is understood that SNP MSPs who did not support the Scottish Government's gender recognition bill and those who have been critical of the deposit return scheme are among the members, and of course they're going to be on both. Asked about the size of the new group and whether there could be as many as 10, the source said more than that. I would say more like 15, and you can guarantee it will be growing as time goes on. More and more people will jump ship from Humza because they will realise what a liability he is, not just to the party, but to Scotland in general. The insider added that there were 9 SNP MSPs who did not support the GRRB, and said that the group has grown by addition of former ministers and a number of MSPs who backed Mr Yousaf's leadership bid. Put to the source that the group would be seen by others in the SNP as a social and or economic conservatives, the politician said, absolutely not. And I don't understand how the party got ourselves in such a fankle that the importance of raising money for public services became right wing. We saw in the 2014 referendum, people made their choice based on how they thought of Scotland's economy under independence. That has not changed. Yes, raising money for good purposes, raising money to lift people out of poverty, to ensure children are educated, to ensure ill people have access to medication and medical personnel. This is not right wing. At what point does having an educated, healthy population become right wing? That is how far to the left the SNP have gone. Basically, they don't want children educated because an educated electorate would start asking questions, and the last thing the SNP need is intelligent questions, because they might have to answer them, and that would be, frankly, appalling for them. Anyway, on the future of oil and gas, they said, for a just transition to occur, you need to allow sufficient time and have an active focus on building the infrastructure and supply chains and resilience to allow turning off oil and gas and turning on renewables. And it won't happen in my lifetime, and probably not in my son's lifetime, simply because you cannot run a world without oil, regardless of how many fairy dreams you have. I mean, you have to think of all the things that oil gives you that isn't actually related to driving cars or running power stations. Things like lubricants, fertilizer, agricultural chemicals, medicines, plastics. And don't tell me you can run a world without plastics, because you can't. Even though everyone moans about it, it's just totally impossible in today's world to not have plastic. So you've got to deal with the fact that you're still going to need oil, even if nobody had a car that ran on it. So all this turning off the oil is sheer madness. It's the sort of thinking of someone who hasn't worked out what kind of world they're living in. Anyway, while the insider underlined that the members of the grouping wish to make a positive contribution to the party, its emergence will raise further questions over unity in the SNP, with splits exposed during a fractious leadership contest. And after winning the leadership race on Monday, Mr Yousaf stressed the need for unity. He cannot have unity. He is acting as though he won with an 80 or 90% mandate. He barely got across the line, and even then only had 37% of the vote of the members of the party. He can never form unity because he's continuing a policy that is despised and loathed by the vast majority of not just SNP members, but of Scots generally. And that's the gender thing. He's continuing a policy with the deposit return scheme that has been shown to be the worst decision economically for a long time. It will be so damaging. There are something like, I think all 5 of the major supermarket chains have rejected it and are asking him to not do it. Nobody wants it. People aren't signing up, and yet he's pushing it. How can you have unity when you keep pushing policies that nobody wants and everybody keeps telling you don't do? It's damaging. You can't have unity when you're an idiot. Anyway, he said, where there are divisions to heal, we must do so, and do so quickly. Well, abandon all the bad policies then. Mr Yousaf faced a difficult start to his new career as First Minister after narrowly winning the SNP contest last Monday. His nearest rival in the race, former Finance Secretary Ms Forbes, resigned from the government on Tuesday after being offered a crap role of Rural Affairs Secretary, while her ally Ivan McKee quit as Business and Trade Minister on Wednesday. Mr Yousaf also sacked the party's Deputy Leader Keith Brown from his cabinet role of Justice Secretary. The Glasgow Pollock MSP. What is it about fish in the MSP? You have salmon, sturgeon and now pollock. Anyway, it's a fishy bunch, isn't it? Anyway, the Glasgow Pollock MSP named just one supporter of Miss Forbes, Siobhan Brown, as part of his 28-strong team of ministers, despite stressing the need to heal division. But he didn't give Siobhan Brown any kind of serious position. She was a very minor, lower rung position there. None of the top positions were given to her, shall we say, the more conservative branch of the party. As the SNP had no majority in Holyrood, under the former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, the party struck the Butte House Agreement with the Scottish Greens in August 21. The power-sharing deal gave the Greens 2 junior ministerial positions in return for the party's 7 MSPs backing the minority SNP administration on key votes. And one of the other conditions was that they had to push these mad green schemes. Do not think that the bottle deposit scheme came from the NSP. No, you can tell how stupid it is because it came from the Greens. Do not think that that Sturgeon was deliberately wanting the gender reform bill. No, she had to push that through to maintain the Greens and maintain her grip on power. These are the things that they want. The Greens also are pushing for termination of pregnancy all the way up to birth. This is madness. And if they try pushing that, the SNP will be finished. So let's hope they do. Anyway, under the arrangement, the Scottish Greens are also obliged to support the SNP in any motion of confidence and on the budget. However, some SNP MSPs have had concerns that some policies have been driven by the smaller pro-independence party to the detriment of the SNP's standing among the public. And these include the ones I've just mentioned, the Gender Recognition Bill and the deposit reforms. Backbench rebellions are almost unheard of in the SNP. And now they're happening because Humza cannot maintain discipline within the party. People look at him and they do not see a leader. They see a man, they see a weak leader, a weak man who scraped over that line and has not got the ability to hold the mandate, and is certainly not going to, he's going to damage the party. He's not an election winner when it comes to the next election. They all see that. And so they all feel free to criticise him and to abandon his policies because they don't agree with them. Like I say, this would never have happened under Sturgeon. However, last year, the party experienced its biggest ever revolt when 9 of its MSPs refused to back the government over the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, which lowered the age at which someone could change their legal gender. It shortened the length of time required to live in the acquired gender and removed the need for a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. Mr Yousaf is expected to deliver his legislative plans for the remaining parliamentary term when Holyrood returns after the Easter recess in mid-April. One flashpoint with the rebels could be over legislative plans to introduce the highly protected marine areas, which would see fishing banned from large areas off the Scottish coast and raising the prospect of major job losses in these communities. But actually, he doesn't have the total power to do this. Under devolution, Holyrood has the power to introduce HPMAs in inshore waters up to 12 nautical miles from the coast, but it can't do it beyond that. That is a UK matter, and it wants to have the power to do that. But even if it did, it couldn't police them. How the hell is it going to police? It doesn't have a navy. It doesn't have any kind of force that will go out and push foreign trawlers out of the area. So do tell how you are going to enforce this, and it just destroys jobs anyway. There are better ways of doing it. Kate Forbes said that it needs to be looked at again, and perhaps have, rather than a complete ban, have timing bans at breeding season and things like that. The policy is contained in the Butte House Agreement, which commits to adding the existing MPA network by designating a world-leading suite of highly protected marine areas covering at least 10% of our seas that include designations of both inshore and offshore waters. It exceeds the commitment to strict protection by 2030 made by the EU Biodiversity Strategy by achieving this by 2026 for inshore waters, so that they can look good. Oh, we've done it early rather than anything else. And yes, okay, we've destroyed our own fishing industry and all these people are unemployed and all their families are in poverty and misery. But hey, we've got we can point to this and say, hey, look at the rest of the world. Look what we've done. Shh. Sweep those people under the carpet. We don't care about them. That's what they do. That is absolutely what they do. They create misery and poverty. Meanwhile, in further concern for Mr Yousaf, a new poll published yesterday, which I covered in yesterday's video, would show that the SNP's lead over Labour was narrowing. And in fact, if there was an election today, chances are Yousaf would lose his seat. And that would be a shame, he says. And that's just going to cover the news I did yesterday. But yeah, as you see, the splits are happening. The people are no longer afraid, and Yousaf must know now that he is in deep trouble. He is vulnerable, and he won't last. Anyway, I shall round off, and we shall come up and finish the video. So I do suspect that this morning Humza Yousaf will be finding his marmalade on toast a little bit more bitter than perhaps he was expecting. The tea won't taste quite so sweet. This is not good news for him. He's a week in and he's already seeing major splits in his party. He's seeing rebellion at the gates. He knows he does not have the power or the force of personality to rein these in. He will rant and he will rave and he will shout, but ultimately he will not be able to control the rebels. So he too is, like Sturgeon, dead duck. She was a dead duck for ever since announcing her resignation. So she was a dead duck at the end of her leadership. He is a dead duck at the beginning of his. Already you can see his days are numbered. Will he beat the Liz Truss record? Will he go within 50 days? Who knows? Who knows? He's not, I think, destined to be the leader for long. It's already opening up, and he calls for unity, but he's quite incapable of unifying the party, especially as he picks only his lickspittles to be in the cabinet. Anyway, we can only hope, can't we? But thanks for watching the video. If you like what you're seeing here, do please hit that subscribe button right there. Ring that bell for notification of future output. Leave a like, leave a comment. Please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well. Don't read polls that are going to split your party. And goodbye.